Photographing a wedding cake that has some distracting background elements is always a challenge, and it can be even downright frightening for an aspiring young wedding photographer. In this case, we're talking about a plate glass window, and next I'm going to explain how I made the best image possible for this lighting scenario. Hi, my name's Jack. I'm a wedding and MBA photographer who photographs up to 22 weddings a year. And this part of my channel is dedicated to walking you through my thought process while making an image at a real wedding that I photographed. So in this shot here, we have a wedding cake that's up against a huge plate glass window with lots of available light outside. And you can see that the tree is partially lit, the building is partially lit. There's a ventilation stack, which is probably the most distracting element that I see that my eye goes to, that is also partially lit. We have a bush that's totally blown out. And then on top of that, we have window light that's coming in from the right-hand side, lighting up the table. So I typically photograph details at a wedding, like the cakes and the rings and heels, bride's heels and that sort of thing, using off-camera flash and a softbox or some kind of lighting element of sorts. So in this shot here, I do actually have a softbox set up and firing here, but it's the power level's turned down quite a bit. And you'll notice by looking at the lower left-hand part of the screen, you'll see that the tablecloth is lit ever so slightly. And so there's lots of distracting elements in this shot. So what I ended up doing is just zooming in, and that's the easiest way to go ahead and just get rid of distracting elements. So now I got rid of the window framing, the window box, but the background elements of the tree that's partially lit and the building and the ventilation stack is still very distracting. So the next thing I did is I cranked up the power of my strobe. And you'll notice from shot one, if you look at the top flower on the cake on the top tier, you can see that the strobe is actually working on that shot on the flowers there. And then it's even giving more of a pop of color. So that's one of the reasons why I really like using strobes, is it gives true to color look to your shots when you use a softbox. But in this case, because we're going into an outside bright area as our background, it's making our background more apparent. So by turning up the power of the strobe on the cake, we're having to compensate for the camera settings to stop down. And what we're doing is we're more so getting closer to the exposure outside, inside. So by doing that, we're making the background even more apparent. And why I did that is because I turned up the strobe power. I have a, a Flashpoint AD300 at full power. And what I could have done is I could have put on a AD600 and crank that up to full power, so doubling the power, and try to darken down the background even more. But in doing so, we're going to rule out all of the available light that's in the room. So when you're using strobe, you want to blend the available light and the strobe light together to mix it in so you don't really notice it. If I just used a full power 8600 strobe, it would be like looking at the sun reflecting off a chrome bumper of a muscle car. It just wouldn't be desirable. So what we did next is we panned to the right, or I moved my body around to the left and I shot directly into a wall. And now we have the softbox off to camera right instead of camera left, and we're getting a soft gradient of light that's wrapping around the cake. And this is more true to my style of photography, but it's still, the background is distracting. Now it's not distracting with lit up elements, it's distracting with physical elements, just like the geometric shapes that are in the background, with the window box on the left-hand side, the actual window on the right-hand side, the partial curtain. So what I did is, while shooting with my 24 to 70 mid-focal length lens here, I zoomed in as much as I could, and then I went in even further, and I'm still getting distracting elements. We're only getting a partial curtain. It's just too small of a curtain. If that curtain was the complete background, this shot would look a lot better. But we're still getting, we're even getting a shadow that's casted on the wall from the strobe catching part of the curtain and then casting that shadow. So we're getting lots of vertical stripes of different colors and shapes and light levels. And then my assistant feathered the light to the right and we lit up the background. And I just, you might like this shot better than this shot, but I just think this is probably the best shot where your eye goes right to the cake. But all in all, it's just not a very desirable shot. And like I said earlier, I tend to use strobe equipment quite a bit You might be asking yourself, why don't you just wait till later on when the sun goes down and then you can photograph using a strobe? We didn't have the opportunity to do that because cake cutting was going to be immediately after sunset photos, and we were approaching that pretty soon here. It was going to happen about 45 minutes later. So I normally photograph with strobes, but the best shot that I had really of this cake are none of the shots that I just showed you. So I'm going to go back through and kind of scroll backwards and show you where we had the progression of all these shots, where we started with. And the best shot I had, to be honest, was a quick shot that I just grabbed when I was walking out to go photograph the ceremony. So when I was walking out prior to the ceremony starting, I grabbed this shot. And this is without a strobe and a softbox. This is just a lens and a camera, a nice prime lens, a 50mm Sigma art lens. And the background washes out and it looks a lot better. Here's an even better shot. We just use the simple rule of zooming in to clean up your background. And although the flowers aren't lit up, it's a give and take. Do you want lit up, deep, colorful flowers in a background that's very apparent? Or do you want a background that's more pleasing and your eye just going to the cake? So in my opinion, this is the best shot, but I will deliver this shot and I will also deliver that shot just in case the couple expects to see a strobed photo from my portfolio. They're going to get that. And then I'm also going to give them this so they can go through the process in their own mind. I even tell them oftentimes, usually when I'm photographing bride and groom portraits, that I'll give you both shots, the strobed look and the available light look. So I would say just don't hold true to your rule of I'm a strobe photographer or I'm only an available light photographer. Sometimes you have to be flexible. So I hope you got some value out of this. If you did, please hit like and subscribe. And until next time, keep shooting, keep learning. That's the only way you get better. Thanks.